Henry is the Director at the Inspector of Government in charge of education, research, and advocacy. And Mrs. Munira Ali, whom you know very well, is the manager in charge of strategic partnerships and public relations. And behind them is Mego Nakajoba. She's a supervisor in the directorate. And of course, Amos, whom you know well, is also an officer, public relations officer. Members of the press and all people watching me today and listening. Today, the 11th of July, 2023, Uganda joins the rest of Africa to commemorate the Africa Anti-Corruption Day 2023. The African Union adopted the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption in Maputo, Mozambique on the 11th of July 2023. And the convention came into force on the 5th of August 2006. To date, the convention has been ratified by 48 member states of the African Union. Uganda signed and ratified the African Union Convention on Prevention and Combating Corruption and has since joined the rest of Africa to commemorate this day, the 11th of July, every year. This year's commemoration will focus on the theme African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption 20 years after. What are the achievements and prospects? It is also a call to action on how can we accelerate the fight against corruption in the next decades. Uganda will spice this commemoration by an under-theme known as strategies and mechanisms to reduce the cost of corruption in Uganda. The African Union estimates that Africa loses about $140 billion through corruption annually. And this is equivalent to the GDP of 43 out of 48 countries in Africa. The GDP of 43 out of 48 countries in Africa is estimated to be $140 billion, and $140 billion is estimated to be lost to corruption in Africa. To put this in another perspective, this amount can ensure uninterrupted power 24 hours a day for every citizen in Africa for 3 years. That is the opportunity cost of this corruption. According to Transparency International research in sub-Saharan Africa, the region remains the lowest performer on the Corruption Perception Index with an average score of 32%. 44 of the 49 countries assessed still score below 50%, and significant declines in many countries outweigh the gains that have been made. There are some African countries that are performing quite well and are over the 51% mark, but the majority are around 25 to 33%, while some others are significantly below the mark. The Inspectorate of Government in 2021 initiated a study on the cost of corruption in Uganda with support from GIZ to generate empirical data on the cost of corruption in Uganda. According to the report, Uganda loses close to 10 trillion shillings per year. This is about $2.5 billion per year in both direct and indirect corruption. This translates to about 23% of the annual budget of Uganda and 44% of the domestic revenue collected in Uganda. 44% of the taxes collected in Uganda are lost to corruption. As Uganda commemorates the Anti-Corruption Day today, the Inspectorate of Government has made significant steps to mitigate corruption. The Inspectorate of Government investigations into corruption-related cases. We have established 16 regional offices to carry out investigations, in short, to take the services closer to the people. These are operate under the Directorate of Anti-Corruption. In the past 6 months alone, a total of 375 corruption cases were investigated and completed in local governments from July to December 2022. The Inspectorate of Government also established the Directorate of Special Investigations to investigate high-profile corruption. High-profile in terms of the volumes of money lost or the category of people involved. And the Inspectorate of Government investigated and completed 6 high-profile corruptions and 108 corruption cases in MDAs. In the last financial year, 2022-23, the Inspectorate of Government prosecuted and concluded 30 cases, out of which 16 resulted in conviction. This is a conviction rate of 53%. And last month, in June 2023, 7 officials of OPM were arrested and arraigned before court over abuse of office. Declaration of assets. Declaration of wealth is an effective strategy in the prevention of corruption and promotion of ethical conduct among public officers. Uganda has made significant efforts in ensuring the effectiveness of declaration of wealth through the establishment of the Leadership Code Tribunal and amendment of the Leadership Code Act to ensure that all public officers declare their income, assets, and liabilities to the Inspector General of Government. These efforts aim at combating corruption in Uganda. Under enforcement of the Leadership Code of Conduct, the Inspectorate of Government in the period July-December 2022 verified deflations of 46 leaders, out of which 43 leaders' income, assets and liabilities were found to be commensurate with their sources of income, while 3 were prosecuted by the Leadership Court Tribunal. Asset recovery. The inspection of government through the Asset Recovery Unit enforces recovery of property in conviction-based matters, recovery of property in tax matters, recovery of property from IG orders and voluntary refunds by suspects and persons of interest. The Inspectorate of Government recommended a recovery of a cumulative amount of 33.2 billion shillings as of December 2022. We have since then recovered 2.3 billion and deposited it in the IG Asset Recovery account held with Bank of Uganda. The Inspection of Government also established a follow-up unit to ensure that all Inspectorate of Government recommendations and court orders arising out of prosecutions are implemented. The Interagency Forum. Uganda, through the Directorate of Ethics and Integrity, DAY, under the Office of the President, coordinates the Interagency Forum for better coordination of all anti-corruption agencies in the country. In executing their mandate, the member institutions work in close collaboration with each other to implement complementary accountability programs and anti-corruption actions to improve service delivery and achieve national development goals. Spot checks. The Inspectorate of Government has made several spot checks in schools, in hospitals, and other public offices to monitor and inspect government programs to ensure good service delivery. For instance, recently, the IGG made an impromptu visit at the National Medical Stores and the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. As a result of these impromptu visits, investigations into alleged misappropriation of funds and abuse of office were initiated in both institutions. We intend to make these impromptu spot checks into public institutions a regular method of work. International collaborations. The Inspectorate of Government is a member to various international and regional bodies, which include the East African Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities, the Asset Recovery Interagency Network for Eastern Africa, the AU Advisory Board Against Corruption, the Intergovernmental Agency for Development, the African Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities, among others. These are Africa-based, but we are also members of other regional and international associations that are in combat against corruption. The new strategy. To ensure that corruption is eliminated from Uganda, the Inspectorate of Government has committed to mobilize citizens to own the war against corruption and to take leadership in the war. To achieve this, the Inspectorate of Government has purposed to co-opt all Ugandans in the war to combat corruption by enhancing public awareness about the cost and the pain of corruption. And this is intended to stimulate and instigate the wananchi to despise, to detest, and to reject corruption. The Inspection of Government is thus mobilizing citizens to unmask corruption and take action. Under this approach, the Inspectorate will recruit all citizens at all levels to be ambassadors of anti-corruption. They will be trained to identify all forms of corruption and expose it rather than be bystanders, because the public are the victims, are the main victims of corruption. This approach will also focus on prevention through advocacy, education, and community mobilization. And this approach is intended, as I said, to incite the population against public officers whose actions of corruption are manifested through lifestyles not commensurate with their known sources of income. Through sensitization, citizens should be able to relate their personal experiences due to inadequate service delivery that related directly to corruption. People should be able to understand that shortage of drugs in hospitals, poor infrastructure, and poverty, among others, happen because very few people embezzled public resources which would have improved the people's livelihood. To popularize this approach, the Inspectorate of Government is using the media through talk shows and barazas, and we want to appreciate deeply the partnership that we have with the media to fight corruption, and we also recognize the media as the people's custodian, as the custodian of the people's right to information. We wish to appreciate and take this occasion to appreciate the ordinary Ugandan who has become proactive in exposing and fighting corruption. We recognize the unknown and unsung heroes who use social media to expose corruption at Entebbe International Airport. They got government to take action. Even though nobody knows who they are not claiming anything, but they fought a war and won it. And we want to recognize those unsung heroes. We want to recognize the unknown and unsung heroes who also used social media to expose the potholes in Kampala. And this action provoked government to find funds outside the budget and repair the roads. These people did not expose themselves. We don't know who they are, but they fought a war and won it, and they need to be recognized and honored. We appreciate the whistleblowers who have continued to provide information on corruption. We recognize and appreciate the ordinary people who use their smartphones and send pictures and conversation, and they send photographs to us and record conversations of people intending to discuss corruption activities. On abuse of government property, we also recognize and appreciate the ordinary people that stand up to testify in the court.